Welcome to In the Know. We are finally getting in front of a camera, in front of a mic. I don't have a great mic. Apologize for the audio quality, but we're here. We're doing an episode, and just very small portion of the season left. The Pelicans have an interesting schedule coming up. We're going to talk about all of that and more. So tune in. Before we start, this podcast is brought to you by Birdsall Law Firm, the official injury lawyers of Boot Krewe Media, located at 918 Poydras Street by the Superdome. Give them a call at 504-523-5413. If you or someone you know has been involved in a car accident or in an accident, make sure to mention we sent you. Birdsall Law Firm, official injury lawyers of Boot Krewe Media. Mason, what's up, dude? The
Not much.
Pelicans haven't given us a tremendous amount to talk about in terms of their encore performance, which has been disappointing to say the least. But I think we have a few things both that you and I want to cover. Um, but before we get into it, I got to take my dedicated time of the podcast to absolutely trash on Chicago's weather, which is where I'm
I
at
knew this was coming. I knew it was
and
coming. All right.
this place just sucks when it's cold. Just cannot begin to process why people want to live in a place like this. But when it warms up, I can see the appeals.
Did you see that the lottery and all that stuff has happened in Chicago in a couple months? That just got released today. So
Is that
I'm gonna
so?
try to make. Yeah, I'm mad enough at you that you picked this week. I'm gonna be in Chicago next week, so missing you by a few days. But yeah, I'm gonna try to make my way over there because usually like they've done it in New York the past couple of years, right? Or
Yeah. Well, who do you think the Pelicans are going to send as their representative?
oh man, uh,
A loaded question. Anyways, the hope is one or two of the Pelicans and the Lakers have really good odds, and Pelicans can then end up with a top four pick. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what they've been doing recently. They're coming off of a very disappointing beating from the Lakers at home on their own home court. And everyone knew the importance of that going in and what it meant for the standings, both in terms of directly beating a team that is competing for the same spot and the tiebreaker stuff. But very, very difficult situation to be in. They are embarrassed. They were completely embarrassed on their home court. They were down 40 at like around halftime, and the score ended up being closer. And when LA left, they let off the gas a little bit, but it was still a complete embarrassment. Um,
yeah.
what did you make of that game in general?
I think it's a lot of all the things that have been going wrong with the Pelicans all at once. Like I feel like they there was no. I mean, they got the doors blown off them in the first half, and then I think almost as disappointing to me was that like they didn't even try anything different in the second half. They just like, all right, let's go back to it. And like it's their credit, like you said, they got back into the game, but it wasn't like the Lakers were particularly interested in keeping them, 40 points away. I mean, it didn't seem like they really thought the game was ever in doubt, which it wasn't. But I don't know. I feel like we see the same things over and over. It feels so long ago, even though like we're talking on Friday, it was the last game they played back on Tuesday. But um, it's just I don't know, frustrating to see that it doesn't really seem like there's any sort of like matchup based adjustments it and yeah, I mean like they're doing the same things over and over again. If they're not playing a defense that is absolutely terrible like Portland's or it just they struggle to generate any sort of quality looks, and that's the story of the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, hilariously, the Lakers ended up losing to Houston the next night,
They
which
rested
is
everyone, right? I mean, no one played.
yeah, and AD didn't play. But still, I mean, it's Houston, which is
Fair.
it buys the Pelicans some time. But I think you're right. Like all of what's been going on in these losses is just, I guess, a microcosm of what's been happening across the season. And after that game came some interesting quotes, some interesting events that happened. So let's talk about that. Um, Willie Green came out and said like to, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of like, we got to be better, and if things aren't working, if shots aren't falling, we got to change it up and maybe get JV the ball a little bit. Christian Clark had tweeted that out, and I think you had a really good tweet on what that means, or what you took from that quote. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think the it seemed backwards to me. Like it seemed that you know Willie Green mentioning all those things as fallback options if the shots aren't falling. It feels like you should be doing those things first, and that's going to help open up the offense. You should be trying to get to the line, whether that's attacking the rim, whether that's getting the ball into Jonas, and who may be able to draw cheap fouls if he's got the right matchup. Not in every situation. Like I thought that Lakers game was a bad matchup for him. The Mavericks game with against Luka and Kyrie, terrible matchup for him. But there's definitely situations where Jonas, like, feeding him, going through him makes sense. Like, but just getting all those things that Willie Green mentioned feel like quality offense. And so it's easier said than done. Obviously, you can't just attack the paint, get high quality looks at will, or else you do it more often. It's harder to do, but at the same time, it just felt it felt backwards to me. Like, that's probably the best way to put it.
Do you feel like, okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Do you feel like that is Willie Green tacitly admitting like he doesn't have control over what the Stars are doing, in terms of them just kind of freestyling and doing their own thing, and not kind of playing to their strengths? Or do you think Willie recognizes, hey, maybe this is something we should have been doing all along, but really hasn't done anything as a coach to ensure that these things should be happening?
I think it's the latter. When I look at the Pelicans, I don't see a team that has a bunch of stars who are too proud to not change the way they play. And I know the easy retort is that CJ has been kind of playing like this for a while, but I feel like he's a vet who, I don't know. I don't get that feeling that the team is uncoachable, because that's what the implication would be, is that the team is not coachable to change up how they play. And when Zion's on the floor, they play differently. I mean, and so I really don't believe that it's CJ and BI would be totally unwilling to change. I don't think it's going to come naturally, and that's the thing. That's what coaching is. It's you have to help break habits and create better better offensive flow and system. And so I guess that's that's kind of my take on it. What do you think?
I think it's a combination of both. I think BI and CJ are the type of players who want to play a certain style of basketball, and I think that they, when left to their own devices, will naturally play that style of basketball. And part of that style of basketball is, I think they like to take the responsibility on themselves to dig the team out of a hole. They go for the 5-point shot, the 6-point shot when they're down, rather than, hey, let's go back to executing, let's continue generating easy looks. No, I think they feel the need to be the ones to put the team on their back, and sometimes the team has very much needed that. But I think on the balance, we've seen this season that approach to the game has not worked out, and I think the coaching staff has enabled them to play that style of basketball. I think part of it is they deprioritize JV. They have the whole year. You've seen it in his minutes. You've seen it in his touches. You haven't seen a focus to really get him involved in the same way that they did last year. And when you do that with a guy, he's going to check out. Like, he's not going to put forth the same kind of effort that a guy who is involved and celebrated is going to put forth. So his play, I think, not only has his play slipped, like he's probably taken a little bit of a step back, but like the overall engagement, I think, has dipped, because
Yeah.
regardless of if he plays well or poorly, the outcome for him is going to be the same. So that's a very defeating place to be in as a player, and
Yeah.
so I empathize with him on that. But the whole year, since there hasn't been a focus on that, there hasn't really been a focus on getting away from the mid-range shots, generating paint touches and opening up looks from three, or quality looks from three, right? So they've said, oh, we need 35 threes. Okay, well then the role players, without further instruction are just going to take bad threes, early clock threes. And that's kind of what you saw in like the early part of the Lakers game. The Lakers were hitting their shots. The Pels felt the need to kind of match that kind of shot profile, and it was bad execution, bad process, bad shot taking. And even though it's like, well, we got the number of threes, we got the attempts up, we wanted the threes, and it's like, no, like what goes into those attempts is important.
Yeah.
And to me, I can draw a straight line from all of that back to coaching, back to, I think it goes to the top. And had there been a focus on different things throughout the season, we wouldn't be having this conversation with 12 games or 13 games left in the season. And so I think it's tough, but the one thing I will say that has stood out to me is, regardless of coaching, regardless of any of this, like, I think there needs to be a larger conversation on, are Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum enough to bring a team to 500 basketball on their own? Should Zion not be playing? And this season has made it really difficult for me to believe in those two as a tandem. Um, and yeah, I think I am off the boat of that pairing.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I will say that there are some, roster construction concerns here from a lack of spacing, right? I mean, like the Pelicans have 3 good 3-point shooters on their entire team. That's a problem, right? And so that and I can appreciate that when you've got Herb Jones out there, or even and you have two non-shooters on the floor. You have Jonas kind of taking up space but not being truly utilized. You're creating situations where CJ and BI, it's they have a hard time generating good offense. But the thing is, to your point, the coaching that hasn't really enabled them to get better quality looks. And so I'm not as far out on as you are on the pairing of CJ and BI. I think with, if you even have one additional shooter out there, I'm curious what it could look like. But it really, to me, it comes back to making sure that you've got the right system supporting them. Like I've been really, and you were way ahead on this as far as during like two months ago when BI was out, you were talking about how you thought Najee could be in the starting lineup when the team was fully healthy. And I didn't think I didn't think his skill set was what they needed. So I was pushing back on that. But now it's just painfully clear to me, like they need a guy whose hands you can put the ball in, that's not BI or CJ, who can at least do something and kind of be trusted as a secondary ball handler, who becomes a primary ball handler in certain situations. Because the Pelicans' lack of spacing creates a situation where if you have BI or CJ on the ball, there's just not, defense are gonna crowd them. And so if you've got like Najee out there, I don't trust Dyson quite yet. I don't think he's shown the ability to consistently attack the paint quite yet. He's more like that Lonzo Ball connector type. But like Najee or Josh Richardson, or even like Herb Jones, enabling him a little bit more with the ball in his hands. And you've got Trey, you've got BI, you've got CJ all around them. I'm not saying cut their possessions. I'm not saying let them take fewer shots, but change how they get the ball. Change where they get the ball. I think getting a little bit more creative on who you play together and how they're used why not? Like what do you have to lose at this point?
I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm with you, and I think that, to me, it's I think you could shuffle around those pieces. I think you can adjust how you're using some of those players. At the end of the day, it's a usage issue for me. And if you have, I think last game the Pelicans basically had like 98 possessions. BI and CJ used 43 of them, right? So if you are allotting 45 to 50% of your offensive possessions to two players, and they aren't able to score at a point per possession, you're gonna be bad. Doesn't matter how who you put in the starting lineup. Doesn't matter how you shuffle it around. When you ramp up the usage of two players so high to the point where they're just the efficiency trade-off isn't worth it. Most nights you're going to be a bad team, and the nights that you're going to be a good team is when they got it going, right? They've both capable of individually getting it going. Sometimes they can get it going together. it hasn't happened all that often, mostly because their shot profile, both of their shot profiles, leaves a lot to be desired. It's mid-range heavy. CJ's done a little better job of increasing his three-point volume as the season has gone on, but he's dealing with that thumb, and he's going to have to probably get surgery at some point. They don't really get to the rim. They don't really get to the free throw line, and so generating easy and efficient baskets hasn't just been something they've done regularly. And people often look at like, oh, well, Brandon Ingram went 9 for 17. That's efficient. It is. It's very efficient. That's why the 4 other turnovers he had kills the team so much, right? That's 4 other possessions that weren't used offensively and are likely, like 1.5 points per possession back the other way, um, because they're turnovers. And so it's just been, to me, like, I think they're starting to do it a little bit with Trey. They've increased his usage. They're getting him more shots, but they've got to distribute those shots a little more evenly. And that's why, like, it's really painful to see how they've used Jonas, because he's a guy capable of eating a lot of usage and being efficient with said usage. And he's at the point where if you're not using him like that, it's not worth having him on the floor because of what he's giving up on the defensive end. And it's just so hard to win basketball games like that.
Yeah, like if you're going to use Jonas like they have, put him put him on the bench and bring him in with second units and have him slow down the game when he's in and have him eat against backup centers and like do that, play, start Larry Nance. Like I think if Jonas is used the right way, he still can and should be your starting 5. But given how they've used him on offense, like you're right, he's hurting them more than he's helping them on the overall because of the defense. And so, yeah, throw Larry out there and just because they close with Larry anyway. So why not just rip the Band-Aid off and start him, and then let Jonas do his thing against second unit players. I mean, it just seems like that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you've tweeted about it. I believe I've tweeted about it. But like the JV BI CJ trio has just been terrible, from an on-off standpoint, and even worse since like Z has went down, right? Like the Z combination, like they were playing close to even. They still weren't great, but since he's been gone now, they've just been an outright disaster. And I think for the season, right now, all 3 of them on for the season, they're negative 13.77 points per possession, per 100 possessions. Like that is just disastrous. They're not scoring at a good rate. Their offensive rating is 111.42, which would be like 28th, 29th in the league, and their defensive rating is 125.19, which is just abysmal. And look, they're not going to bench CJ. They're not going to bench BI. That's just not going to happen. And it's not something I encourage either. And I wouldn't have recommended they bench JV at all. But like, let's look at the facts here. This lineup has been, and the starting lineup with Herb and Trey in it, just been downright awful. They start each game down 10, down 12, down 11, and claw their way back, and the bench has to kind of do what they got to do. Try it. Try starting Larry. Just at this point, what do you got to lose?
Yep. Like I it's a bias for me because it's the game I was at, but I look at the Detroit Pistons game, the one in Detroit, as as kind of like the example of everything that's been wrong with Jonas's usage. Like he was demolishing Nerlens Noel, like just totally toying with him, and they didn't go back to Jonas until literally the game was at risk in the fourth quarter. I mean, like his stat line was great. Like you're gonna see, like I think it was like 30 and 15. I don't know. He put up numbers, but they just refused to go to him down the stretch, and then the Pistons clawed back into it, and it was like a 3-point game or something at some point. And then finally, like, oh yeah, I guess this is how we're winning. So they finally went back to the last couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and they won. But it got way closer than it needed to, and it just felt like that's a pretty good example of how they were very reluctant to use him in advantageous matchups. And then if that's the case, then play him off the bench.
I mean, the other thing is, by like nature, if you're bringing him off the bench, then you're minimizing the number of minutes he sees versus like high pick and roll guys that are starters in the league, right? Like I think like the Luka and the OKC stuff is like a great example. Like you can't have him spend the majority of his minutes while Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's on the court. Like maybe try to minimize their overlap, right? Likewise, like you can't, if he plays 25 minutes in the Mavs game, you can't spend 21 of those minutes with Luka on the court. Like that just is nonsensical. And so there's just so many like low hanging fruits that the Pels staff has like over the last 2 years have not capitalized on, and it's extremely disappointing. And I think you're going to see changes in the staff this summer. I think there's going to be changes on the responsibilities. I think they're going to bring in new people. I think they're going to bring in more offensive minded people, maybe a person. I don't know, um, but I'd be shocked to see them run it back with this staff and this approach to the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, and if it's a pride thing for Jonas, like, I get it. The guy's been a starter his entire career. So there's got to be that element to it. But I want to believe that if you tell him, look, we're not going to reduce your minutes overall by much, but when we bring you in, we're going to go to you. We're going to feed you. I want to believe that he'd be at least open to it. If he's not just too defeated already, how he's been used, but because I think one of the first things we noticed when Josh Richardson started playing is, wow, someone will pass the ball to Jonas.
Hold on. Can we talk about that for a second? They started Josh Richardson for 3 games out of All-Star break. They had their practice. Oh my God, we practiced on a Tuesday. Like CJ made a big deal about it. Like they got in their extra practice. Their big decision out of All-Star break, seeing all of the data that they had, seeing everything that we saw about their offense being completely terrible, was to get Josh Richardson out on the court, bench Trey Murphy. Why? Oh, so we can put a little bit more know-how on the court. And they lost 3 straight games, and they were unable to score, and they were unable to defend, and it was a complete disaster. And now Trey's back in the starting lineup, and he's been killing it. He's been killing it for like the last 10 games or something like that. And it's just like stupid, short-minded stuff by Willie Green and his staff that is just completely nonsensical. That and it's repetitive. It's like you never learn from the first time you fuck it. Sorry, Lala. First time you mess it up. It's like you never learn from that. And anyways, I had to go on my little rant there.
Well, no, I mean, I think the thing is, when Richardson was in the starting lineup, I think the hard thing to accept is that Richardson did play well, but like his skill set is just like putting in his skill set and taking out Trey Murphy's skill set with what else was on the court for the Pelicans. It didn't seem to make sense. And so, like, I don't want to not use this as a way to not, like, Josh Richardson was a phenom defensively in those games. Like, he was creating all kinds of problems, but they still lost.
And not only did they lose, like, in his minutes, the Pelicans were terrible defensively. Like, that's the other thing, is like individually he was fantastic, but those lineups were disastrous. They weren't even good. So it's just like they can't see the forest from the trees sometimes. It's just, I don't know, disappointing. Anyways, they're going into a stretch run. They're coming up against Houston, Charlotte, San Antonio. 4 tanking teams that have no desire to win, but at this point can probably afford to play spoiler. Like, really, who's passing them up in the stands? Who is, right?
Charlotte's been like below average. I wouldn't even say they've been terrible recently.
Charlotte's been better than New Orleans since Zion,
like with LaMelo out, which is kind of surprising. Like, they've had a lot of good contributors.
It's insane that they have been like 3 games better than the Pelicans since Zion went down. Like that,
because they lost LaMelo during that time too.
Completely wild. And but yeah, I mean, look, none of these games are something they should expect to just win outright. They gotta bring their A game, and all of these games are games where JV should dominate him, and they should use him. He's dominated the Spurs all season long. The first matchup against Charlotte, he completely barbecued him. Houston doesn't have a real center. Like, are we really afraid of Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr.? Like, come on. Like, I'm going to calm down here a little bit, but it seems to me these are excellent games to get the big fella involved and build his confidence back up.
Yeah, I'm with you. You hope that happens. Nothing we've seen this season allows me to believe it.
Devontae Graham's going to drop 40 on the Pelicans. Going
It's
12
coming.
for 17 from three.
It's coming. He's gonna Devontae's gonna look at what didn't Nikhil have a nice game against us earlier this season? I feel like
Yeah,
he
dude.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
when
so
they
he's gonna look
trade
at that and
JV,
try to.
JV's gonna give them like 27 and 17.
Oh, he's gonna give him the business. That's gonna be a thing next year. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, like, do they have in your eyes? Do they have to go 4-0 to like
Yes,
actually? Yeah,
yes, no doubt, because that stretch afterwards is not a good stretch.
not good. No, it's not.
Yeah,
Like
they
West
need
Coast trip.
every single win they can get, every road win they can get. Yeah, at this point, there's just no runway,
Yeah,
and any kind of they gotta get in, and maybe they win these four, and you're looking at maybe Zion like a week away, and you're like, okay, cool, just need to hold the fort for the next 3 or 4 games after that,
yeah.
and maybe you got something, but we'll see, man. We'll see. I think just want to shift the conversation a little bit to like longer term. I think regardless of what happens at the end of the season, we can all agree the season hasn't gone the way many would have liked it to go.
Didn't
Um,
quite get your 3 seed projection from before the season. I was
they
really
were on
hoping for
pace.
it.
They were on pace
They
until shit
were.
happened.
Yeah, they're on pace for
Um,
2. The 2 seed. Forget 3.
I mean, the Kings are the 2 seed, and they're going to lock that up. And
Yeah.
so that yeah, while Memphis has imploded in every way possible, um,
Shows the value of health, man. It really does. I mean, there are a bunch of teams that you could argue at full strength were good enough to get that 2 seed this year. I really believe that.
oh for
And
sure.
Kings, yeah.
And but the Pelicans, we've kind of talked about what they need to do in the summer, what they should do, and we've generally been on the same page. But I think I'm driving the conversation back towards where what we talked about earlier. It's like I think this summer I'm breaking. I would like to break the big three up. That is me and me personally, and I think the one guy you can't move is Z, because he is the one needle mover out of all of them, and the guy capable of dragging you to wins in pretty much any situation. So I think it would be prudent for them to find either high level play creation or high level shooting in the form of a big man. Um, Maybe both if they can. I think they have assets to kind of figure out which direction they want to go in. Um, I am not opposed. I know a lot of people are like, can't bring in more rookies, can't bring in more young players. I am not opposed to getting contractually younger if you can pick up. I think the Pelicans pick is going to be whatever. Like I don't expect that to be good. I don't expect lotto luck. But can you? I'm not. I mean, this is the kind of the elephant in the room. Like if you were approached by Charlotte, let's say Michael Jordan sells his stake, splashy new owners want to make a make a move and they offer you, and Charlotte gets the number 2 pick, and they offer you Gordon Hayward's salary, which is expiring, Mark Williams, who is a talented young big man, the number 2 pick for Brandon Ingram and JV. I think like most people would probably say no, like that's not worth it. But if I can get that Scoot Henderson or that Brandon Miller pick, the 2 or 3 pick, man, I'm strongly considering that.
I don't blame you. I think it poses some. No, I guess it doesn't. I was gonna say it poses some dual timeline risks that like if assuming Scoot's as good as we think he's gonna, most people think he's gonna be. By the time he's actually like, a guy who you can rely on to be a championship team, are we hearing like one, can Zion stay healthy, and two, are we hearing about Zion wants out of New Orleans? Like, I just think that there is some inherent risk in doing that beyond just the value perspective of are you kicking the can down the road too much, because New Orleans is not everyone's favorite basketball market, and so I want to be
Yeah.
careful about that.
No, I agree with you. I think you need to make moves that, in addition to that, that would shore up the rest of the roster and allow you to be competitive. But I think the way I'm looking at it is I have a 5-year window with Z, and I'm gonna do what I can in that 5-year window, um, to get as much
Do you
talent
though?
in as possible.
Like, it's a 5-year contract, but do you really want to call it a 5-year window?
I think either health or contract wise, like 5 years is about as good as it's gonna get.
Well, yeah, that's the optimistic view. It's like if things haven't gone well, like in year three, after year three, is he looking? I don't know. He doesn't really have a leg to
Well,
stand
why
on.
haven't things
No pun
gone well,
intended, because
right?
of the
Well,
injuries.
that's what
But
I'm saying is like if
yeah,
things haven't gone well because he's not healthy, then
yeah,
I
you
don't,
can't.
then there's nothing, you could keep, you can hold on to any of your guys. Like we've clearly seen Brandon Ingram and CJ can't win if he's not healthy. So like it doesn't matter who you got out there. At least in that situation, if he's not healthy, I still got a Scoot Henderson, right? I still got somebody who can maybe turn into something, or if you have to move on from Z, I can pivot to that group, right?
Mhm.
Um, but best case scenario, Scoot is a good rookie in year two. He's making that leap like Ja did, and or some of the other rookies did, and you're right back to your ceiling's a lot higher, and whereas your floor hasn't dipped because Z is Z, but it all depends on Z, right? If he
Yep.
plays 70 games next year, then I feel confident that's going to be a good team
Yep.
regardless. I mean, I don't want to say regardless of the roster, but like they have enough talent with who they have with like CJ, Trey, Herb, Dyson, all those guys, and whatever moves they're gonna make. Like I think they will be a solidly playoff team, likely a home court playoff team if he plays 70 games in any given season. But if he doesn't, then who cares, right? And then at that point, okay, would you rather go through a season of mediocrity with two guys like CJ and BI who are getting a lot of star type usage but not producing wins, or you know you have the potential of a guy like Scooter, Brandon Miller, or whoever turning into perhaps yet another needle mover that allows you to
Mhm.
like survive the stretches that Z misses.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the way in which the season's gone has like, my view from the start was that the CJ McCollum trade was not done through the lens of this is the best this the this is the big three that we're going to win a title with. The reason one of the reasons the season's been so disappointing to me is that CJ felt like the right guy to give you that injury insurance, right? Like if Bi or if Zion's missing time, you've got two guys that can score and create at a high level, and that has not obviously panned out even close to what we had hoped for this year. Like you saw last year, like okay, this team without Zion can tread water to be pretty good even without him with the guys they got, and then you just replace Tony Snell with Dyson Daniels and run it back, and like so there's a lot of reasons, albeit based around a smaller sample size, to be optimistic, and that hasn't panned out. And so if the Bi CJ tandem is not enough to keep you afloat, and you're gonna you probably don't want to really structure the optimal team around Z, Bi, and CJ. That just there's a lot of defensive holes there beyond other things. Um, then yeah, maybe you accelerate looking to change things up. And like I'm not saying that you trade Bi, but I am kind of agreeing with the notion that maybe you have to expedite the timeline in which you change things.
You're getting there.
So, huh?
You're getting there.
Well, like I mean, that
I
could be
think
CJ.
you
Like,
see, yeah. I mean, of course it could be CJ. I'm definitely, if they find a good deal for CJ, if they're able to do that and not have to attach a ton of assets, or the assets they attach are bringing back a needle mover. Hell yeah, I'm all for that. It's just that deal, the CJ deal, I find a lot harder to move. Um, I also think they need CJ from if they didn't trade for CJ, you're not getting this version of Z. If they didn't trade for CJ, this locker and season's probably a lot bigger of a mess than it currently is. And so that kind of adult they need. Um, I just don't think Brandon is that guy. I don't have any faith in him turning into that guy. I don't think Zion is that guy until he can stay healthy, because a guy who just isn't on the court is not someone that's going to have the ear of the team. Um, but you know, are you creating a situation where guys are going to tune CJ out? Maybe, but at that point, do you want those type of players on the team? And so I think they need CJ. I think they need a Larry. I think they need vets. Um, they need playable vets. They don't need Garrett Temple types. Uh, they need guys that have, you know, been to war in the playoffs, and they need that. And I think they would need that. I would argue they need that even if they hold on to this big three. They need more of those guys.
Yeah. Did you ever float the? I feel like I saw it somewhere. The Ingram for Bridges before like he started blowing
McCall,
up the
yeah,
way he has him.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
I feel like people were very much thought that was blasphemous, and now look at what he's been able to do in
I think
Brooklyn
McCall's a
already.
better player. I'll straight up say it. I don't care. I look, McCall impacts the game on both sides of the ball, and he's the classic example of you give an efficient player more usage, they're going to put up points. And Brandon Ingram's scoring ability individually is dazzling. It hasn't moved the needle um, for the Pelicans in a way that produces wins, um, and he doesn't give you enough on the defensive side of the ball. With McCall's availability, the fact that he plays 82 games in a year. Like he like never misses, literally just doesn't miss a game. Um, and the fact that like he is happy, he doesn't see himself as like a number one. He's happy to like take a back seat if he needs to. His contract, all of the above. Like if you offered the two teams a trade, I think Brooklyn immediately says no. But I could be wrong there.
Nah, I mean, especially given what we've seen from Mikhail in Brooklyn, like I don't think there's a conversation to be had. I think there certainly was when Bridges was in Phoenix and
Phoenix,
his
oh,
role.
absolutely.
Yeah, but right now, like I mean, I just look at what the numbers he's putting up. I mean,
Yeah, let me pull those up so people can understand. Really, 1 second. Cal
his
Bridges,
last, yeah,
he's
he's
averaging
he's put up
26 points.
30.
He's averaging
Yeah,
26.1 points per game in Brooklyn. 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists. Still playing the defense that he's playing, and that's on 63.7 true shooting. 63.7. So he's averaging 26 points per game, and Brandon Ingram uh, for the season is at 22.9 points per game, and he's below league average efficiency. So, like, scoring was the one area there was a significant gap in, and you can't even say that there's a significant gap there. Can Brandon get you a bucket in an isolation situation um, in an easier fashion than Big Cal can? Most likely. But on the balance, if I'm giving 20 scoring possessions to McCall and giving 20 scoring possessions to Brandon, McCall's probably going to be the more efficient guy. And that's wild. That's absolutely crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Like
I
that
mean,
we are
like
at this point.
yeah, I mean, like Mikhail's at like 45% 3-point shooting in Brooklyn, so it's a little over, but like it's still like he's put up 30 points in 5 of the last 8 games. Like he's been and there's no one like there's better. Brooklyn's got better spacing. The team with Ben Simmons is better spacing than Pelicans. It says a lot,
I mean,
but
they're starting Nick
um,
Claxton too. Like it's
yeah,
not like they got like I mean they got a lot of shooters, but I think they have a better spacing because they got better coaching. But I mean, Mikel's been for his career a 38% guy from
yeah,
three,
he's good.
and the last 3 years, it's been pretty. I mean, like since 2021, actually, he's been 39.9%, right under 40%. So like he's been efficient his whole time. Um, I don't know, man. It sucks because like I think the Pelicans desperately needed more from Brandon Ingram, and he just hasn't been able to deliver. Uh, and I don't, a lot of that's on coaching, a lot of that's on not having the right roster, but like I think all of that kind of goes into it. If you're a type of player who needs a lot of these things to go like to be like ideal or near ideal, then how good of a player are you really? And I think he's a very good player. Brandon's a very good player, but I think there are conversations after the last playoff series where is he going to push top 15? And I think at this moment he's not a top 30 player, so it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit more lenient on BI and his and kind of what's I think I put a little bit more of it on coaching and a little bit less on him and coaching and roster construction just because of how few shooters the Pelicans have had this season to work with. And so it is disappointing. Like even the frustrating thing is like even like last year they could throw Tony Snell out there who didn't give you anything else, but he could shoot. Like the Pelicans now, they literally only like there's no one down the bench that they can put in and say, all right, this guy's not that good of a player, but at least defenses care when he spots up. They have 3 players that like that, and one of them doesn't shoot threes. Bi, he won't shoot threes anymore. And so it's CJ and Trey. Your only 2 volume shooters who defenses actively care about, and so that's a real big problem for any offense or any scorer. It just full stop, and so like
he's taking less threes than last year, which is crazy. And he like didn't take threes last year. Took 4.1 a game. He's at 4.0 a game this year. Yeah. Per 100 possessions, he's at 5.8, which is he was at 6.0 last year. And the 2 years prior, he was at 8.4 and 8.6.
Yeah, and like he can shoot over guys too. So like that's another frustrating thing is like he's dude's super tall, has like a super long wingspan too. Like it doesn't like there's no reason why he can't take more. It's not it's not like he's like CJ shooting and CJ's 6'4", and so I don't know. That's one of the things I'm not
3 on a good day.
So like that's I think that's one of the big complaints I would have around it. It's probably. And that's a good question. Is it coaching or is it just lack of willingness to shoot them?
I mean, it's both.
But
it's both, right? Like, I think a good coach or good coaching staff gets that out of it. I don't think Stan was a good coach. I don't think Alvin was a good coach. Ingram was taking a lot of threes under him, a lot more threes, right? They were able to do it. There's just been no focus or emphasis from the coaching staff from getting him to do it. It's not that he's unwilling. I mean, he's not like a willing guy, but you can coach him to do it. He's very coachable. I think he has everything that makes you want to believe in him. From the offensive skill set to the passing to the size to the personality, the low maintenance, the even the way he bought in on defense last year. I thought he was a needle mover on that end, and this year I think he's gone back to being a disaster on defense, and it's unfortunate. I think he's had moments of individual greatness, again, very capable of those flashes, and so it's like what is necessary for you to put it all together, and how much patience should a team have in order to wait for that? Because I think at this point, the thing I keep coming back to, it's very, very basic, but at some point, you are who your record states you are, and it's been 7 years, and he's been unable to shift the team towards winning in 7 years. Like a winning record has just not been something he's been a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
I
can't help.
That's not great, because you're like, okay, well, the Lakers years, you can just write them off. They sucked, right? And then the LeBron year, okay, that sucked. Okay, the first year with the Pelicans, that one was weird. Zion got hurt, but Drew and all them, yeah, okay. But he was an all-star that year. Stan Van Gundy year, pandemic year, COVID year, weird. Last year, again, at each individual year, I think you can figure out, you can point to something that contributed to them not winning. But a lot of that has been him. A lot of that has been also his inability to stay on the court. You can't win if he's not playing too. So it's like, you have a guy. What do you do with a player who, a third to a half of his games, a half is extreme, but like a third to, but yeah, I mean, that's the range. A third to half of his game, he's going to miss. And the other, 60% of the games that he's going to play, maybe, like, you don't know what you're getting out of him necessarily. Like, like the point ranges you're going to get. He's probably going to put up 20 to 25 points in any of those games, but you don't know if you're getting the impactful Brandon or a guy that's just floating and taking a lot of shots.
I don't know. I guess my feelings towards this are, there are a lot. I feel like there are other players around his range of who you could potentially say a lot of the same things about, like, if you
Okay, so like
take.
who?
I'm thinking about Chicago.
Yeah,
I think there are a lot of corollaries between the Bulls and the Pelicans.
definitely. So
Yeah,
let's talk about them.
like sure. And so, like last year, I guess how do you view Bi compared to the two scoring wings on the Bulls, like Levine and DeRozan?
So let's talk about Levine for a second.
Okay.
Levine is at almost 25 points per game, right? He's at 60% true shooting. Both those marks are higher than Brandon. And I think if you look at the Bulls team context, they are much more talent devoid than the Pelicans. And I think those two guys, Levine and DeRozan, and their coaching staff is trying to make the best out of a shitty situation, whereas the Pelicans have more talent and they're squandering it. Um, and so I think I would put them in similar tiers. Like Brandon's on a similar tier with those two, but I think when you compare the roster, the Pelicans roster is far better than what the Bulls roster has. And I think if you were to swap the two, the Bulls are worse and the Pelicans are probably 2 to 3 wins better. Not significantly. I'd say 2 to 3 wins better.
I don't know if I agree, and the reason is coaching. Like, do you think the Bulls are a materially better coached team than the Pelicans right now? Like, and
I don't think they're a greatly coached team, but yes, I think the Pelicans are a poorly coached team. So I would say yes.
okay. So, and even despite that, you think you plug Levine in to Bi's everything, Bi's role and all that. You really believe that the Pelicans are a better team?
No, I think if you swap Bi and CJ for Levine and DeRozan, the Pelicans are
Oh,
a better team
gotcha.
by
Sorry, I
2 to 3 wins.
misunderstood.
By I think if you were just to do a straight Levine and Brandon swap, it's probably a wash.
Okay, I I think that's I think that's fit,
I think it's probably a wash, but actually, I'll take that back. I think um, you're going
these
to
Bulls
get
are a
more
little
wins.
worse.
Bulls are a little worse, and I think your Pels you're going to get more wins simply because Levine's played 64 games.
Oh, okay, that's fair. I was
He's
saying
played
like
64 games, and Brandon's played 33.
yeah, okay. I mean, I think the 2x games played is a huge factor here, but I don't know. I think the Pelicans are, if you get this equal games from both players, I think the Pelicans are a better spot with Bi than with Levine. But I think the CJ Bi for DeRozan and Levine swap is fascinating. Like I hadn't even thought about it that broadly before.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, like from a realism standpoint, like no team's ever going to make that trade.
No,
Um, but yeah, I mean I think yeah, I think that Levine and Brandon are similar to your players. I don't think anyone's mistaking them for all NBA players at this moment. I think um, Levine has more physical issues at this point, but remarkably has still played more games than Brandon um, each of the last 3 years, which is saying a lot. Even last year, Levine was like on one knee. He played 67 games. Brandon played what 53, 55, something like that. So you're playing 10 plus games, 12 plus more games, and you're scoring at least similarly in volume. Actually, Levine's scoring more. He's always scored more the last 3 years, but you've just been straight up more efficient. The last 3 years, he's been 63% true shooting, 60.5, 60.5. And I mean, and Levine's also a volume 3-point shooter. So it's like, I think team context probably dictates like who they are as stars, as an individual talent. Levine might be Levine, I think, offers more on the scoring end. Brandon's more capable on defense and definitely a better playmaker. Um, More well-rounded. Brandon can sometimes rebound the ball, and Levine's just you probably don't know what you're getting out of him if he's not scoring, right?
yeah,
Um, but he's available, and that's a big difference. Like
no.
two playing twice as many games is big deal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know. I think this ultimately for me, there's. I think the one point, and we probably can wrap up soon, but like the one point I want to stress is that this is an organizational failure. I think, to put it very simply, this is not like I feel like this podcast has been very hard on BI, but I feel like the Pelicans have not put him in a position to succeed because of roster construction and the lack of shooting around him, and because of coaching and how they've been able to utilize him, structure the offense, take some pressure off of him by feeding Jonas. Like, there's so many other things that the Pelicans, I feel like, could have done, even with the guys they have, to be more successful and more consistent on offense, and they just haven't. And then obviously we just, it's hard to create. You can't create space out of thin air if defenses aren't going to care about most of the guys you got out there from the perimeter. The floor shrinks, and good luck. Like, that's like Luka territory, James Harden territory, like players who can still make something out of nothing in those situations. And so, look, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around for what's going on right now, and it shouldn't just fall at one player's feet.
No, completely not. And I think, it's not on one player's feet. Like, if you were to list the biggest problems the Pelicans have, like, Brandon's not near the top. Right? That's just not the case in any sense. It's just he's the highly paid player in the star, so he's going to get most of the attention. And frankly, like, CJ just hasn't been good, and that goes back to our conversation earlier. It's like, when you have two of those guys who consume as many possessions as they do, they need to be efficient, and the circumstances have not allowed them to be efficient either.
Yeah, I do feel like we're going easy on CJ here, and like, because he's paid pretty much just as much as BI is, and I know he's had a thumb injury, so it's really hard to, like, but also, like, he's, kudos to him for playing through it, but like, he's come up short too, and so we spent a lot of time talking about.
There's BI, so many. His shot selection kills the momentum so frequently, and it's tough, and I think they gotta rein that in, and that's why, like, when we talk about, like, I don't like those two together, I would like to break them apart. It's like, I that's why, like, I think in a perfect world,
profile is different.
Yeah, in a perfect world, you're moving off CJ, and you're getting back an adult, and you're also getting back, a talented guard. But those two things right now in the NBA at the guard position are nearly impossible to find, because every team holds on to them. So yeah, I think the perspective I always come at it from is, hey, long term, I'm trying to build a team. What's the positive value play here? And unfortunately, the conclusion I've arrived to, and I'm not saying it's the right one. The conclusion I've arrived to is, it's probably easier and more worthwhile to move Brandon and then restructure the team than it is to move CJ and build around Brandon and Z.
But I guess the counterpoint is, if you want to make a move this summer, if you feel like you have to, I agree. But, like, if you feel like you can make tertiary roster adjustments and, like, put a good team on the floor next year, assuming, knock on wood, full health, then suddenly being able to move, making CJ the guy you move, feels a lot more palatable. And so I guess that's why I'm not as dug in on, we got to, what the big three needs to be broken up this summer. I don't necessarily feel that way. There has to be changes, coaching staff, roster, definitely. But I think if you can make enough adjustments around the fringes, specifically, figure out what the heck you want to do at the center position, and then add more shooting around the rest of the team, then maybe you don't have to break up that group right now, and then suddenly moving CJ in a year becomes more realistic. I don't know.
All depends on Z.
Yeah.
Literally all depends on Z. If he's healthy, all of these conversations are much different. If he's not, we're back to being the shitty old Pelts.
It's been a bunch of rainbows and sunshine on this podcast today. It's been great.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no.
Let's go beat the Rockets.
Yeah, beat the Rockets. Get this season back on track. Season starts tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beat the
Let's
Rockets. Get Dyson Daniels a birthday win here.
Yeah.
Ugh. Hopefully, we have something better to talk about. We didn't even get to talk about like the fact they had a players only meeting, the fact that Willie Green took 25 minutes after the Lakers game to come meet media. Things were not good. Things were things are. Let's just hope they got it all aired out and they're locked in here for the stretch. I think that's all we can say.
Yeah.
That's I was a big fan of the JV and Zion John Wick commercial.
Yeah. That was cool.
We need
I feel
more of
like
that stuff.
yeah, I feel like you need more of a role for JV. Like he didn't really say much, but yeah, that was it was good stuff.
Classic JV not being utilized to his potential, huh?
Yeah, we saw that offseason interview when he like imitated LeBron James. Like there's potential there. We just got to
There's so
tap
much
into it.
potential there. That I hope he's in the movie like Boban was in John Wick Chapter 3.
Yeah.
Um, that'd be great. I hope he just continues to bring random tall European players into his movies, and that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways,
Anyway.
I hope y'all enjoyed this
Tolerated. I think tolerated is
tolerated
probably a better
tolerated this
word.
podcast. We're gonna get lit up on Twitter because of all the Brandon
Oh,
Ingram talk. You just know it. But anyways, are you ready for the underdogs, the upsets, and the unbelievable action from DraftKings Sportsbook? The biggest tournament in college basketball is here. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 of college hoops and instantly get $200 in bonus bets. Plus, for a limited time, all customers can score a no sweat bet round during round one and two of the tournament. Go to the app, opt in, place a no sweat bet this weekend. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. I'm excited for Alabama. That boy Brandon Miller's been playing really well, so keep an eye on him. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Sign up with the promo code BOOT, BOOT, as seen on your screen. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, win or lose. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code BOOT. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Thanks for listening, folks.